Hello, this is a book that I got off of the Gutenberg Project. You can find that online. Hopefully, Joe will link that down below. But this is called Confessions of a Railroad Signalman. I haven't read this myself, except for a little bit of the first couple of pages. Seems good enough. So I figured we'd go on a journey. You and I, me and you, us, all together here. Because it's on the Gutenberg project, you can actually go and follow this along. You can read it directly in the website as an HTML file. You can see it as a PDF. You can see it as, I'm seeing it as an EPUB that I threw on my phone because, why not? But there's a variety of ways of making this happen. And I guess we should go ahead into some details. So this originally was published by Riverside Press, Cambridge in the year 1908 by Mr. J.O. Fagan, F-A-G-A-N. I apologize, Mr. Fagan, but I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And if you get back to me, I'll pronounce that a little better. But let's go ahead and start this book. Confessions of a Railroad Signalman. Chapter 1. A Railroad Man to Railroad Men. Considering the nature and intent of the following essays on safety problems on American railroads, some kind of a foreword will not be out of place. As such, I wish to make this a foreword a personal presentation of the subject. But in order to do this in a satisfactory manner, it will be necessary to take a preliminary survey of the situation of the topics in which we as railroad employees are all personally interested. In the industrial world of today, the railroad man occupies a position altogether different from the ordinary run of workers in factories or machine shops. On account of the nature and importance of our callings, we are constantly in the public eye. By way of encouragement and as an incentive to good service, public opinion accords us certain distinctive privileges, that there may be no excuse for laxity of conduct or inefficiency of service. We are looked upon in many ways as wards of the state and the nation. Not only are the hardships we endure and dangers we call upon to face matters in which the public is profoundly interested, but all details relating to our wages and to our treatment by railroad corporations have always been considered by the American people as topics of discussion which they are at all times intimately concerned. Glancing backwards at the history of railroad life in America, it is easy to perceive that this public sympathy and encouragement has been in the strong right arm that has supported the railroad employee in a long drawn-out struggle for the bettering of his social and financial condition. In some directions and in some branches of the service, the issue at stake have been bitterly contested, but the final results are probably unexampled among the successful achievements of organized labor, not only numerically and financially, but also as regards the intelligence and education of its units. The railroad service today stands in the foremost position among the great industrial institutions of the country. This is written by an American. That's a side note right there. You can put that in quotations as me saying that, not the person. In America, that's me. To continue. The nature of the service we railroad men render to the public in return for these benefits is most important, and under present conditions, extremely dangerous. Some idea of the hazardous nature of our occupation may be gathered in the facts that in a single year, one employee in every 364 was killed, and one in every 22 was injured. In the ranks of engineers, firemen, conductors, and brakemen, one in every 123 was killed, and one in every 10 was injured. This is about the average record of recent years, being 1908. It means, of course, an appalling number of accidents, and these accidents are manifestly an eloquent reflection of the risks to which the traveling public is constantly exposed. In many ways, humanity is indebted to the railroad man to as great a degree as to sailor. The latter indeed has great hardships to endure. He is not nearly so well paid, and he has to submit to a much stricter code of discipline. but for some reason the railroad man has the more dangerous occupation. If one may judge from a comparison of the fatalities that occur at sea and on the rail, in a storm at sea, battened down, under closed hatches, there is nothing to think about but the fury of the gale and our own helpless situation. We appreciate to the full our dependence upon courage and watchfulness of the sailor. But the public does not consider a railroad man from quite the same viewpoint, for reason, perhaps, that the unavoidable dangers on the rail are not to be compared with the ever-present peril that surrounds a ship in its battle with the elements. And yet, when we come to compare actual results, that is, statistics in regards to ship travel and train travel, one is quickly confronted with the conclusion that the public is fully as dependent for its safety upon the human elements of vigilance and concentration to duty in the one case as in the other. Looking at our subject from the widest standpoint, however, it is evident that the dangers that threaten the passenger on the steam cars are more dangerous than the passengers himself has any idea of, and these dangers are very uncertain in their nature and difficulty to guard against. Constant attention and supervision is being universally exercised by the railroad officials, for the purpose of reducing to a minimum the number of accidents that can occur from defective equipment and the like. But the accidents caused by the personal neglect or carelessness of individual employees is a branch of the subject that calls for a very different kind of investigation and treatment. In order to get an intelligent and comprehensive idea of these railroad accidents, both avoidable and unavoidable, the national government has directed and empowered the Interstate Commerce Commission to secure and to publish statistics on the subject. In this way, for a number of years, the public has been kept informed in regards to all casualties of whatever nature that take place on our railroads. But right here, the work and influence of the Nation and State Commission, as well as of all railroad managers and individual investigators into the personal side of the problem, come to an end. Being in full possession and understanding of the actual results of our system of operating the rail, the authorities seem disciplined to adopt any radical measure for the improvement of the service. In a report prepared for Congress some time ago by the Interstate Commerce Commission, it was distinctly affirmed that the avoidable accidents were mostly due to failures in duty of signalmen and enginemen. This is a quote. There is no escape from the conclusion that the block system is the best known instrumentality for the prevention of collisions, end quote. Says the report, quote, notwithstanding the imperfections that have been shown in the result of these operations, end quote. According to the same report, during a given period, 13 collisions occurred under the telegraph block system, and all of these, so the commission say, were chargeable not to the engineman but to the telegraph operator. Yet in the same period, 7 collisions occurred on lines operated under the automatic block signal system, where the telegraph operators were eliminated. These collisions were due to misconduct or neglect of enginemen. It is reasoned from this that the defect in the automatic block system is that the telegraph operator is not there to caution the engineman. The presence of telegraph operators who attend the signal station serves as a caution to the engineman, whereas when the telegrapher is not there, the engineman is in danger of failing to note the signal. In other words, the commission finds the telegrapher left to himself is unreliable, and the same conclusion is arrived in regards to the engineman and automatic signals. According to the report, to obtain the desired security, the best known method is to rely upon the operation of these 3 acknowledged insecurities. But apart from this consideration, the point for us railroadmen to note is that we have been found directly and personally responsible for the accidents. Our failure in duty has been the cause for the loss of life resulting from these conditions. To say the least, these failures in duty are very numerous, and the authorities who are depended upon to look into these matters are of opinion that the block signal system is the best known instrumentality for the preventions of these accidents. But unfortunately, a great many years must elapse before the railroads, both single and double track, can be thoroughly equipped with these signals. And meanwhile, the public must remain at the mercy of these failures in duty, which the main, someday block signals are expected. Working along these lines, however, the progress made by the authorities in eliminating the cause of these accidents and improving the conditions has so far been very insignificant. There seems to be an inclination in all quarters to let things run their natural course and to wait for the time when these accidents shall become mechanically impossible. But the writer of this book has very different ideas on the subject. He has studied the actual results that have been obtained from these block signal systems, and at the same time, he has paid particular attention to the behavior and responsibility of the men in regards to these accidents. The study referred to has not been a matter of a month or two, but many years. For unknown reasons, some of my critics have seen fit to question the nature of my experience as a railroad man. Unfortunately, it is an easy matter to give an account of my qualifications. The mere fact that one has had a varied and lifelong experience as an engineman or conductor would be only partially significant. But a man who has been a telegraph operator and towerman for 27 years, and part of the time chief clerk to a railroad superintendent, has certainly some claims to an all-round knowledge of his subject. The extent of all territory covered by this experience is even wider than one would suppose, for a telegraph operator is of necessity one of the best posted men in the service. He has occasion to observe and is more or less obligated to understand nearly every move that an engineman, conductor, or brakeman has occasion to make in his routine of his work. He has every opportunity to observe just how trainmen of all classes obey the rule and the signals. Add to his opportunity to become conversant with the practical sides of railroad life, the knowledge that is derived from attending to the correspondence of a superintendent, and the general work of the office. This includes supervision of payroll, the hiring and examination of men, the investigation of accidents, the tracing of trouble for every description, and the handling and movements of both freight and passenger trains. In a general way, this has been the nature of my experience, which I think has been eminently practical and not academic. Consequently, though some of my statements and conclusions may be questioned by railroad men who have had equal or greater experience, I nevertheless think that in the interests of public safety, I should be favored in a full and patient hearing. Addressing the great body of American railroad men, I have no hesitation in saying that the service with which we are connected rests today under the shadow of a great shame. The situation cannot be looked upon in any other light, and it remains with us as a body and as individuals to apply the remedy. In order that my standpoint and the reasons for my conclusion may be thoroughly understood, I think it will be profitable as well as interesting to give a short history of the personal investigations and study which for many years I have steadily pursued in the interests of better and safer railroad service. Manifestly, in order to treat my subject in the widest and fairest manner, all sentimental or personal scruples must be thrown aside. In explaining my position, I can in no way be a respecter of persons or traditions. To me, the management of a railroad is merely part of the subject matter which I am called upon to consider, and an organization of railroad men is nothing more or less, so far as my investigation is concerned, than a combination of units constituting a certain influence which I feel myself as a perfect liberty to criticize in the interests of the larger social body represented by the traveling public. The death roll and records of suffering and preventable accidents in the United States is justification, repeated 100 times over, for any and every conceivable probe into personal conduct or the policy of organizations. But in holding up the conduct of others to criticism, it is but reasonable that I should begin with my own conduct and work in the matter. By what methods and means, for example, have I arrived at the conclusion that on our railroads the interests of the community may have become secondary to those of the employee and his organization? This, of course, must be looked upon as a very serious statement, and it certainly calls for the earnest consideration of intelligent railroad men. In order to understand the nature of my evidence on subject, it will be necessary to go back with me to the time when my attention was first directed to railroad accidents. In the year 1892, a very serious accident occurred near the signal tower where I was employed. Although I was not on duty at the time, I was naturally very interested in the case and paid particular attention to the evidence that was brought forward at the hearing in the effort that was made to hold an engine man responsible for his disaster. A passenger train standing at a home signal, which was set at danger, was telescoped from the rear by a freight train, running practically at full speed. About 1,500 feet from the home signal at a distant signal was located. This signal, in the cautionary position at the time, was a distinct notification to the freight engine man to proceed cautiously and to prepare to stop before arriving at the home signal. An additional reason for such caution arose from the fact that the night was dark and extremely foggy. The explanation of this accident was to me extremely simple. The signals were all right, and so were the rules for the matter, but from one end of the road to the other, these distant signals were dead letters. In daytime, with apparently a clear track, absolutely no significance was attached to them. Consequently, I was not surprised at this disaster in the fog, but the incident was brought home to me in such a dreadful way that it started a line of thought and an investigation into the safety problems of our railroads that has lasted until today.